So we're going to show you a few videos now to illustrate the use of a Coolboy RW, which is a derivation of a Coolboy machine. Sometimes this machine is also referred to as a Coolboy 4-flex. As with all of our equipment, it will have been delivered to site using a pallet network carrier, and it may arrive in a pallet as shown here. And depending what you've ordered, you may also have requested and you may receive a forklift hook attachment, similar to this here. If you've ordered a forklift hook, that will be on a second pallet, which will usually be stacked on top of the Coolboy RW pallet. So you may have a double layer pallet with all the kit components in there. No matter what you've ordered and however it's been delivered, you need to take special note of how it's packed away, because at the end of the hire it's your responsibility to repack that machine and those components to make sure we can pick it up from site and transport it safely and economically through the pallet network. It may be a good idea to take some photographs or even a short video on your mobile phone just to remind yourselves of how the machine's packed away so that you can repack it in exactly the same way for transportation. If the kit is sent back to us in a different state, it may well get damaged in transport, or it may incur additional transport charges. So to avoid that, please take special note. And one other note about the packaging: if it's been wrapped in pallet wrap, we now use biodegradable and compostable pallet wrap, so you may well take that into account when you're disposing of that pallet wrap. So we're just going to now just look at the kit contents and lift the machine out of the transport pallet, and we'll talk a little bit in detail about it. So depending on what you've ordered, you may well have a lift arm here, which we'll explain later. You'll have one or two, in this case we've got two secondary safety straps here, and obviously, as with all our machines, you'll also have a machine manual which is specific to this particular machine, and this manual will contain the LOLA and CE certificates. So if that gets separated from the machine, make sure that it's brought back to the machine so you can refer to it, and also it can be sent back with the machine at the end of the hire. So we're just going to lift the machine out of the pallet. Just going to Neil and Gabe will come into shot. We're going to attach this to an overhead crane and just lift it out of the pallet. Now we're going to attach our crane to the lift eye here, and we need to release that first so that lift eye is pointing upwards. On the side of the machine here, you've got a handle which can go both ways. One is for tilt and rotate, and one is to release the lift arm, which then goes up in the air like that. So we're just going to attach our overhead crane to that and lift the machine clear of the pallet. So we can just simply rotate it down, stand it on its wheels, and drop it down onto the floor. So you note the actual machine itself is retained in this cradle, which has got wheels on the bottom, and it allows you to store the machine in this cradle, and also you can transport it across site, move it short distances by tilting the cradle back and wheeling it along the ground. It's important that you make sure you store the machine in the cradle, exactly as it's shown here, because that's the ideal way to store the machine. It makes sure that the seals are not touching any surface. It also makes sure that the cabinet's upright, and that's the best orientation to protect itself from the weather. So when you're not using the machine, you store it between work sessions or overnight, please put it back into the storage cradle as it's shown here. So to remove the machine from the cradle, you just need to lift it off the ground again. Just lay it down on its back. Okay. And then you'll see here the top pad is caught under a lip here, and the bottom pad is under a lip at the bottom here. So we need to slide the pads out of the lip, that Neil's doing. Just pull those pins and slide the pads away, and you can lift the machine straight out of the cradle. Now, just to reiterate, don't store the machine on its back in the cradle as we've just lifted it up. Make sure the cradle's standing upright and the machine's vertical when you're storing it. So now the cradle can be put to one side, and we're ready to start looking at the machine and some of the features of the machine. So you notice there that the pads themselves they can be positioned. There's locks on each side of the pad. There's 4 pads, and you'll see on the bar here there's location holes where the pads will locate and lock. So you've got 4 suction pads. This is a dual circuit machine, so 2 pads are on one circuit and the other 2 on the second circuit, and they tend to be this one and this one be on one circuit and this on the second circuit. Each pad is rated to 100 kilo safe working load. There are 2 pads at each circuit, so this machine has got a 200 kilo safe working load. That's for each circuit. And those safe working loads have also got double safety factors. As with all of our machines, the Coolboy is a battery operated machine. I'll open this cabinet, just to show you what's inside there. You've got the battery, you've got a vacuum pump, you've got various other components which control the machine, and you've also got a battery charger here. Apart from just looking out of curiosity, there's no real reason for you to open that cabinet. That can stay locked. And if the machine is upright when it's not in use, as I keep repeating, it's a fairly watertight structure. The charging port is down the bottom here. You need to connect the machine to a 110 volt supply. And when the machine arrives on site, the battery will have been charged, so it should be suitable for a day's use. But as soon as you start using it, you need to make sure you put it on charge that evening and leave it on charge overnight. You can't overcharge the battery, so please don't worry about putting it on charge on Friday night and leave it until Monday morning. But you must get into the routine of charging the machine overnight so that it's available for use the following day. We'll talk about the function of the voltmeter and the various lights when we switch the machine on. Just want to show you on the side here. We showed this handle before, one direction for tilt, and the other direction you can rotate the pads. Neil will rotate them now, and they will rotate through a 360 degrees, and they lock every 90. Okay, so that's a dual function lever for tilt and rotate. So I'll ask Neil to tilt it back up again. Okay, and the other thing to just show you while we've got it on the overhead crane here at the moment. So with all of our machines, our cladding machines, you can lift in wet conditions, and you just got to make sure that you wipe excess water away from the suction pads are going to locate. But if you're lifting in wet conditions, at the end of a working shift, you need to drain these 2 vacuum tanks. And to drain them, underneath here, you've got 2 drain valves, one for each tank. And to drain that, if Neil can come and just show you there, you just need to pull the pin at the side and then open the valve and let the water drain out. Same both sides. That's a stiff one, there you go. So that would, any water that's accumulated in the machine would drain out, and when it's empty, just push the valve closed again. Okay, and you see that the lever of the valve is behind the locking pin there. Okay, and on the bottom machine, now it's up in the air, you've got the main power switch on off, you've got the vacuum control here, and that's pretty much it. You'll see when we switch it on that digital readouts appear in these 2 windows here. That's just the digital vacuum switches, and we'll explain the function of those shortly. So without more ado, what I'm going to do is switch the machine on. It'll start making a few noises, and I'll explain what it's doing when it's doing that. Okay, so when you switch the machine on, it's going to go through that cycle every time. And for that reason, don't switch it on and off between panel lifts. Switch it on at the beginning of the working session and leave the machine switched on until you finish that working session. Then switch it off, drain the vacuum tanks if it's been wet, and put the machine back in its cradle and then put it on charge. Now we've switched it on, you'll see that various things have started to come alive. On the front here, you've got the voltmeter that indicates the state of the battery. Now the Cool Boy is a 12-volt machine. So even though this is a fully charged battery, the needle is only about halfway on the scale. It's sitting around about 12 to 12.5 volts. It will never indicate much above that level. Don't expect the needle to go all the way around the gauge. It won't. It will only approximate be where it is now. And as you work the machine hard, that needle weight will go down the scale slightly, down to 12 volts and even sometimes below 12 volts. You'll see those little digital readouts I mentioned earlier now have appeared in the window. I will explain the significance of those later. And you'll also have noted that when we switched it on, the red light came on with a warning siren, but after 10 seconds or so, that went out and the green light came on. Even though the siren went out, you also heard the vacuum pump operating, and that's going to operate at any point during the lifting process. So they're the main features and controls of the machine. We're going to pop it back into its cradle